So jumping right into it, this instrument is the Sonicware Liven Ambient Zero. And like the title of the video states, I think that this synth is misbranded. The point of the video isn't to say that to talk down on Sonicware or the synth by any means. I actually love the synth and I love Sonicware. So the point of the video is actually to show that this synth is way more capable than it is marketed as. Because when you look at its page on their website, it's primarily marketed as a wavetable synth that's basically made just for ambient music. The main reasons why I think that's untrue is because, or not fully true, is because it's also an FM synth, it's also a drum machine, it's also a sampler, it's also an amazing effects unit to run external audio through, and certain other things that I don't think they really just showed the full capabilities in their website, in terms of it's marketed as having only 2 LFOs when actually it has 3. It has a really deep modulation matrix which isn't really touched upon. So there's certain things like that that I'm going to show what it can do a little bit deeper throughout the course of this video. So yes, it's true that this is a wavetable synth, since you can scan through different wavetables as well as harmonics. And yes, it's true that you can make ambient music on this device, of course. But it's neither of those things fully, because it's also an FM synth, and there's no reason why it's fully catered to just make ambient music. I would say the things that technically cater it to making ambient music are the fact that it has this, hold note function. So you can just like instantly get these sort of drones just being held here. So that's kind of cool. It also has like a shimmer reverb, which is kind of usually associated with ambient music, and the fact that its sequencer can go at a really slow pace, actually 1/8 of the BPM. So its lowest BPM is 40, and then if you divide that by 8, it can go really slow. It's actually 5 BPM is the slowest the sequencer can run. So those are certain things that can cater it towards ambient music. But really, you can make ambient music on any synth or even any instrument, to be frank. Just instruments in general I don't think should really be put in a box on what kind of music you can make with them. Of course, like certain instruments are more catered towards certain genres. For instance, certain guitars might be more catered towards jazz or blues, but there's no reason why you couldn't run those guitars through an distortion pedal and make, or run them through high overdrive and amp and make like metal or hard rock music. Or there's certain pianos that may be, again, suited towards better for pop, but there's no reason why you can't play jazz on those pianos. So I don't think that is really a limitation that should be put on any instrument, let alone a synth that can technically make almost any single sound, and also has a drum machine built into it. So now I'm going to show how the Liven Ambient Zero functions as a basic 2-operator FM synth. So basically it has all these different waveforms. Let's start with a sine wave, because that'll make everything way easier in FM, even though it has these really unique capability of starting with different types of waveforms, which makes it actually really deep as an FM synth. But so let's get a really simple sound wave playing here, and then you have the balance, which is how much the modulator is affecting the operator. Let's set that to a medium amount, and then you have the pitch of the modulator, and then you also have a detune that goes all the way up to noise. So let's clear that. And so there's all kinds of applications, because it has all these different waves to start with, and then to add the LFOs on top of that. I'll make another video on how deep this is actually as a 2-op FM synth and how much variation you can get out of it. But one of the best applications is turning this into an FM drum machine. So a way to do that is to scroll all the way to the final waveform, which is white noise, and turn the detune up to max. So now you just have noise, pretty much, which is great for making drum sounds. So set the release lower, and let's put a high pass filter, and now you have like a great shaker. Great hi-hat sounds here now. And let's say if you put a low pass filter on instead, you have a great snare sound that you can sequence in there. Do snare stutters, and you have all these other features that you can use to make cool drum sounds because you have control over everything else at the same time. So yeah, that's a great one of the great applications of the FM Synth engine on the Ambient Zero. So here I just want to do a quick demo of the sampler and how you can also sample drum sounds onto it, and how it's not just for noise or for nature sounds or things like that, but you can really sample anything. And now I'm just going to do a demo of 3 different tracks that I made that are definitely not of ambient style. They're more just like dance tracks, EDM, house, techno, breakbeat, stuff like that, to show that you can make really anything with it. So one of the other things that this is super underrated for, I think, is using it as an effects unit for external audio, because the effects are so high quality in this, including the reverb and other effects. So it's really just like a multi-effects pedal that you're getting for the price, just included in this all-in-one box, because it has the line in. So for instance, let's demo first with the internal effects, and then I'll use an external source and to see how show you how it affects that. So you have a very basic patch there, very basic waveform, and I'm just going to show you how adding effects can really brighten that up instantly. So this is a delay. It also has a reverse delay. Right, without any, again, this is like a very basic patch, and it's really clean, like adding so much to it. It has a distortion that really helps drive the sound. A bit crusher, a tilt EQ, and then a really nice chorus. And then what the best effect here is the reverb that you can add. So this is without, this is just the, sorry, this is the dry sound. Let's add the reverb. And then you add shimmer. So it has super long reverb tails, and now when you combine that with the other effects like delay, so now I'm going to demo its usefulness as an effects unit to apply all these amazing effects to an external sound source. So I have here a really basic sound source, which is a pocket operator. I have like a kind of really ugly plain patch saved there, but look what happens when now I start adding reverb to it. Sorry, that's adding delay to the sound, and now let's add reverb to that. So you can see how I turned a very basic sound into something really decent and usable just by applying these effects. Let's try another effect, like the bit crusher, and see what we can get there in combination with the reverb. So another thing I want to show on how I think this synth is a bit underrepresented on their website is the fact that it has 3 LFOs and not 2. And that's because this modulator knob is also an LFO with its own independent rate, depth, and shape. The only difference between that and these other 2 LFOs is that you can't assign it to any destination that you want, but it's already mapped to really good destinations that you can see in the structures here. So for instance, if I go to drone 2, it's mapped to the harmonic. So let's get a really simple sound wave here. And you can definitely hear that being mapped to the harmonic. We can change the shape. And then now we can set the other LFOs to different parameters. And then now we have 3 LFOs going. If I get yeah, so this is absolutely crazy. I have 3 LFOs going now, not 2, as you can see. And then if I add reverb to that, you can get some really crazy sounds. Okay, the last thing I want to show in how I think Sonicware could have done a better job of kind of just explaining how powerful the synth is talking about its modulation matrix. It kind of like, and I'm saying that because you have an LFO that you can assign to so many different destinations, right? Like I'm just scrolling through them so quick here, but you can see really how powerful each LFO is in terms of the shapes that it has and the destinations that it has. But that's not really a mod matrix if you just consider it having LFO destination as a modulation effect. But it also has because it has these triggers to set how many times the LFO cycles, you kind of actually have an envelope as well if you set the trigger to 1. So I'm going to give an example of that. So for instance, like here is the LFO set to the, let's say, the harmonics. And it's going to cycle back and forth. It's going to change the waveform back and forth, right? But if you set it to trigger once, it kind of acts more just like an envelope. And I'll show that with something like the volume. So I'm going to set the volume to 0. And now you can see if I trigger the envelope once, you're going to see. Oh, sorry, I have to set this to level. I'm going to set the destination to level. And now it's sort of acting like a envelope as opposed to an LFO, right? If I set it back to trigger off, now it's going to trigger like an LFO. But if I set it to trigger only once, sorry. Oh, that's too fast. Yeah, it can act like an envelope. You can hear the volume increasing now over time. So I hope overall that this video was able to shed some light on more of the capabilities of the synthesizer and how much you can get out of such a relatively inexpensive and portable device. I do want to say I kind of understand why Sonicware didn't want to fully market it as all the things aforementioned in this video. I think it's partially because people tend to criticize things for what they aren't rather than appreciate things for what they are. So for instance, if this was marketed as a sampler, people would maybe like as a real sampler, people would try to compare it more to way more expensive devices like MPCs and things like that and say, hey, this can't do what my $1,000 large sampler does. Or if they were to market it as an FM synth, they would compare it to something like the Digitone, again, like an $1,000 FM synth, and say, oh, it doesn't do what this 4-operator FM synth does. So it would kind of draw comparisons that would be unfair maybe to what this can do. But I kind of look at it as like the more something can do in one box, the better for me. I like gear that is portable. I like gear that you don't have to connect to a whole bunch of other stuff and make a whole mess of cables. It makes it cheaper. And just having all that in one box is a pro to me. And obviously there's a big market for people that appreciate having all these features in one box, and some people that don't care for it, which is also completely fair. So that's overall my impressions of this thing, and hopefully you got something a little bit more out of this video if you already have the synthesizer, or if you are thinking of getting one, or this would be something that can be useful in your setup.